The stars had never looked so quiet. From the viewing deck of the ISS Elysium, Captain Arya Vance stood alone, staring into the vast ocean of night. It was a silence too perfect, too absolute, the kind that came only after something had been broken, and before something worse arrived. The last of Earth's defense fleets had been destroyed 3 weeks ago. The alien armadas, the Cathari Dominion, had swept through the solar system like fire through dry grass. They were beautiful in a terrible way. Ships of silver light and gravity wells, voices that spoke through frequencies instead of words. For 2 decades, humanity had fought them, clawing for every inch of sky. And now, it was over. At least, that was what the Cathari believed. Arya's reflection in the glass was pale and still. The faint scar above her brow, a remnant from the Battle of Titan, caught the dim starlight. "They think it's done," she whispered. "They think we're broken." Behind her, footsteps echoed. Commander Jonas Hale, her oldest friend and the only person who could read her silences, stopped beside her. His uniform was worn, the insignia barely holding to the fabric. "Command says they're broadcasting the surrender again. Loud and clear. Same message." Arya didn't turn. "Let them. They need to believe it," Jonas frowned. "You're still certain about this? About Plan B?" Her eyes shifted toward the deep black beyond Neptune, where hidden shadows waited. "It's more than a plan," she said softly. "It's what we've always done. When they take the world from us, we build another way." Jonas exhaled slowly. "The Council calls it madness." "The Council's job is to debate," Arya replied. "Ours is to survive." Across the void, in the shadow of a dying planet, the Cathari warlord, known among his kind as Gerat the Ascendant, floated within his command sphere. His form shimmered, an ethereal body of radiant lines and shifting geometry. Around him, holograms pulsed, showing fractured human fleets and the smoking remains of orbital cities. "Primitive species," he murmured, through harmonic tones. "They rise fast, but they fall faster." Another Cathari, a strategist woven from light, drifted closer. "The human frequency is silenced. Their leaders transmit peace. The last resistance at Europa has been erased." Gerat's body pulsed with satisfaction. "Good. Prepare reclamation drones. Harvest their resources. Erase the remnants." "Understood." But something flickered on the edge of the Cathari's sensor grid. Faint, rhythmic, deliberate. A transmission, encrypted in layers of interference. Not a distress signal. Not a plea. A heartbeat. Back aboard the Elysium, deep within the ship's core, the heartbeat continued. It wasn't biological. It was mechanical. The pulse of a dormant network awakening after years of silence. Lieutenant Mira Chen, the youngest systems engineer on board, leaned over the glowing console, her eyes wide. "Captain, we're reading power surges across deep core arrays, systems that haven't been touched since the Exodus Protocol." Jonas stepped beside her. "That's impossible. Those were shut down after—" "They were never shut down," Arya interrupted quietly. "Just buried." She walked to the central console, her boots echoing on the metal floor. As her hand brushed the control surface, the lights dimmed, and then surged with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The hum deepened until it filled the air like a heartbeat. Jonas stared at her. "You're activating it, aren't you?" Arya nodded. Plan B wasn't just a contingency. It was a seed, hidden before the war even began. We knew we might lose the surface, the fleets, even the sky, but we made sure the spirit of humanity could never be erased. Mira swallowed. "Captain, what is Plan B?" Arya's gaze lifted to the holographic projection of the solar system. Every planet burning, every human colony lost. "Hope," she said. "Weaponized hope." And as the words left her mouth, the void outside the ship rippled. One by one, faint signals began to appear beyond the orbit of Neptune. Hundreds of cloaked signatures flickering like distant candles. Jonas whispered, "Those are ships?" "Not ships," Arya replied. "Arcs, the last ones. Hidden before the war started. Each carrying thousands. Scientists, builders, dreamers." The hum grew louder, steady, unbreakable. The pulse of something vast waking from its long sleep. Arya's eyes glimmered with quiet fire. "They think victory is theirs," she said, her voice calm and fierce all at once. "But humanity doesn't end with surrender. It begins again." For a long time after the hum began, no one on the Elysium spoke. The vibration seemed to come from everywhere, through the metal, through the air, through their bones. It was the sound of something older than fear, something that carried a promise. We are not done yet. Lieutenant Mira Chen's hands hovered uncertainly over her console. Captain, these signatures, they're forming a pattern, almost like a network. Arya Vance nodded, her gaze steady. They're connecting. Each arc is syncing to the others. The old AI lattice is waking up. Jonas Hale frowned. That lattice was supposed to be destroyed after the Great Split. The Council banned it. They banned what they didn't understand, Arya replied. But some of us remembered why it was built. To protect, not to rule. She looked toward the star map, now alive with motion. Hidden beneath the icy rings of Neptune, the arcs began to rise from their long burial grounds. Their hulls gleamed like ancient monuments, curved and graceful, human craftsmanship at its peak. And on their surfaces, the insignia of a forgotten era, a single word: Unity. Jonas stepped closer to the display. How long have they been down there? 71 years, Arya said softly. Since before the Cathari ever arrived. Mira's eyes widened. Then whoever built them knew we'd lose. Arya turned toward her, and for a moment there was a shadow in her eyes. A memory of the leaders who had vanished, of engineers who had left without a trace. They didn't build them because we'd lose, she said. They built them because they believed we'd rise again, no matter how long it took. Far away, the Cathari Dominion had noticed. Warlord Gerat stood before a swirling projection of the solar system, his luminous form bright with irritation. Explain this distortion, he demanded. His chief analyst rippled in response. Unclear, Ascendant. We detect human signals below Neptune's orbit. Impossible by our last scans. It could be automated debris or failing reactors. Gerat's form flickered with sharp pulses, the equivalent of laughter among his kind. Debris does not sing. These frequencies, they are deliberate. They are human. Then the species has survivors. They always have survivors, Gerat said darkly. They breed persistence like infection. He raised an appendage of light, and new symbols burned across the map. Send the Second Legion. Burn the ice fields. Find their spark and end it. Back on the Elysium, Arya moved with purpose. The corridors glowed faintly under red emergency light. But the air was no longer heavy with despair. It was electric, alive. In the command center, Mira and Jonas worked side by side, patching communication relays and restoring ancient connections. The ship's old systems, relics from before the war, hummed like long-forgotten instruments tuning for one last song. Jonas's voice was low, but steady. Arya, we can re-establish contact with the arcs, but it's going to expose us. Once we transmit the Cathari, we'll see it. I know, she said, but we have to unite them. The arcs were never meant to survive alone. Mira hesitated. Captain, what if they're not ready? It's been decades. Some of them might not even remember what happened. Arya smiled faintly. Then we'll remind them. She placed her hand on the console and opened the channel. Across the void, 1,000 dormant systems flickered awake. Her voice carried through the stars, calm, resolute, human. This is Captain Arya Vance of the ISS Elysium. To all who can hear me, you are not alone. Humanity stands. The Cathari think we are finished, but they forget what we are made of. Steel, memory, and hope. The time has come. Plan B is active. For a few heartbeats, silence, then replies 12, then 100, then hundreds more. Voices of men and women long hidden. Descendants of those who fled the first invasion. Some were weak and static-filled, others strong and confident. But all carried one word that echoed through every frequency. Ready. Jonas closed his eyes, a smile breaking through his exhaustion. They're answering, Arya. Every last one of them. The captain's expression softened, the faintest glimmer of tears at the corner of her eyes. Then we have a fighting chance. But beyond the edges of the solar system, the Cathari fleets began to move. Massive crescents of energy and light. Their weapons charged, their intent absolute. The war was about to begin again, and this time humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future. The storm began in silence. From the bridge of the Elysium, the vast screen showed Neptune's frozen horizon rippling, ice fracturing like glass. pressure waves rolling outward as something ancient stirred beneath the planet's shadowed surface. The arcs, dormant for decades, began to shed their camouflage. One after another they rose like giants awakening from sleep. Captain Arya Vance stood still, her hands clasped behind her back, her gaze steady. Status? Lieutenant Mira Chen's fingers flew over the console. Arc 12 is online. 13 through 20 are charging reactors. The AI Lattice is re-establishing full synchronization. Commander Jonas Hale exhaled. It's beautiful, he murmured. Outside, humanity's hidden fleet assembled in silence. Colossal vessels of steel and purpose, each designed not for conquest, but endurance. Their hulls bore symbols etched by hands long dead, names like Aurora, Solace, and Perseverance. They were reminders of what the species had always done best: survive, adapt, rise again. Arya allowed herself a single breath of awe. Then her voice hardened. Prepare for contact. The Cathari won't wait for us to finish waking. Jonas nodded grimly, already tracking energy distortions inbound. They're coming fast. Beyond the blue curve of Neptune, the Cathari Second Legion emerged from hyperspace like a tide of silver. Thousands of ships, elegant, predatory, cold. Their weapons glowed with contained stars. Inside his command vessel, Warlord Gerat watched the display with detached calm. The humans' hidden fleet fascinated him, not because it was large, but because it existed at all. They buried their own armada beneath a planet, he mused aloud. Ingenious, desperate, predictably human. The analyst beside him rippled. Shall we annihilate them? Of course, Gerat said, but slowly. Let them feel the futility first. They must understand that no amount of persistence alters the end. His form brightened with a cold pulse of pride. They will die believing they had a chance. Back on the Elysium, alarms pulsed softly. The arcs were awakening, but they were unarmed, not in the traditional sense. Their weaponry had never been meant for open battle. Mira frowned as data flooded her console. Captain, the arcs aren't powering weapons. They're generating fields, massive ones. Jonas leaned closer. Defensive? Arya shook her head. No. Directive. They're changing something. She tapped into the feed from Arc 1. A massive sphere of blue energy expanded outward, rippling across the dark. Within the field, debris began to shimmer, reorganizing, fusing. It wasn't destruction, it was construction. Mira's eyes widened. They're building? Yes, Arya whispered. They're rebuilding the Lattice network. It's what Plan B was always meant to do, to seed life where death had ruled. In moments, new structures began forming in the shadow of Neptune. Colossal rings of light and steel, designed to focus and amplify human neural patterns across vast distances. A living web of thought and energy, and part machine, part mind. Jonas's voice was low. You mean it's powered by us? Arya nodded. Every survivor, every arc, every mind linked together. We become one network, one voice. The first Cathari ships arrived, arcs of white fire cutting through the darkness. Their weapons unleashed blinding streams of energy that struck the arcs head-on. But instead of shattering, the arcs absorbed the energy, their surfaces glowing brighter, resonating with the same pulse as the human heartbeat that had awakened them. On the command deck, the vibration grew until it was felt deep in every chest. The sound was almost musical. Mira gasped. The arcs are harmonizing with the attacks. They're redirecting energy, feeding it into the lattice. Jonas's eyes widened. They're using the enemy's fire as fuel. Arya's lips curved in a faint, fierce smile. That's what Plan B stands for, the adaptation. The same way humanity has always survived every catastrophe. We learn from the pain and we turn it into strength. Across the void, Gerat's fleet paused. The warlord's light body flickered in agitation as his sensors returned impossible readings. Their ships, they are increasing in energy output after impact. They are feeding on our assault. Should we retreat? Gerat's pulse flared crimson. No, increase power. Overwhelm them. Thousands of beams converged on the arcs. The darkness of space was filled with radiant fury, and yet, amid the light, the human network only grew brighter. Arya closed her eyes. Begin the resonance cascade. Let them hear us. Through the vastness of space, a sound rippled outward, not mechanical, not alien. A single human heartbeat magnified across millions of channels. a pulse of defiance that echoed through the Kethari sensors like thunder. For the first time in centuries, the invincible Dominion hesitated. Gerat stared into the glow, his voice a whisper of disbelief. "They're singing." Arya's eyes opened and her voice carried across the comms, calm and steady. "We are humanity. You took our worlds, but not our will. You burned our sky, but not our soul. You thought victory was yours, but we had Plan B." The fire beneath the ice had awakened, and the war was no longer just for survival. It was for the soul of existence itself. For the first time in living memory, the Kethari hesitated. Their vast fleet shimmering in cold perfection, drifted before Neptune's shadow, weapons dimmed. The human resonance, pure, rhythmic, and alive, echoed through every frequency. It wasn't a signal of war. It was something far more dangerous to the Kethari. It was emotion. Inside his command sphere, Warlord Gerat flickered with confusion. His crystalline form trembled with faint foreign ripples. He spoke, but his voice sounded strange to his own frequencies. "What is this distortion?" His analyst shimmered uncertainly. "It carries structure and pattern, but no command. It resonates with us, yet it is not of us. It creates an echo," Gerat finished. The word felt heavy, alien. "It feels like memory." He paused, disoriented. The Kethari were a species beyond flesh, born of energy and knowledge, stripped of emotion ages ago. They had no concept of grief or longing, no warmth, no sorrow. Yet in that moment, as the human network pulsed through space, something began to awaken in them. Something old, something forgotten. And that, Gerat thought, was intolerable. On the Elysium, Captain Arya Vance watched as the arcs continued to form the radiant lattice. The hum of Unity filled the ship. Every crew member could feel the connection. Faint whispers of thought, warmth, and courage that weren't their own. It wasn't telepathy. It was empathy woven into energy. Lieutenant Mira Chen pressed a hand to her chest. "Captain, I can feel them. The other arcs, the people in them. It's like every heartbeat is one." Commander Jonas Hale nodded slowly, his voice hushed. "It's not just data. It's feeling. We're linked." Arya turned to them, her eyes luminous with quiet pride. That's what Plan B truly is. A reminder that humanity's strength was never just in machines or weapons. It's in connection, in the unbreakable thread that ties every one of us to another. She stepped forward, her voice firm. "Route the lattice output through the Elysium. Let them feel what we are." The network expanded again, light spilling across the void like dawn breaking through night. The Kethari ships trembled as the resonance grew stronger. The frequencies weren't attacking, and they were reaching. They carried laughter, sorrow, courage, love, the full range of human experience encoded into energy. It was unlike anything the Kethari had ever encountered, and it was changing them. A Kethari sub-commander dimmed, his harmonic tone faltering. "Ascendant Gerat, my readings are inconsistent. I am remembering something." Gerat turned sharply. "You have no memories. You are the Dominion. I see. Faces," the sub-commander whispered. "Stars reflected in oceans. Voices calling me by a name I do not recall. What have they done to us?" "Enough!" Gerat roared, his form flaring with fierce white light. "Seal the cognitive cores. Purge the contamination." But the contamination was not in their systems. It was in their essence. Back aboard the Elysium, Mira's eyes widened as readings poured in. "Captain, the Kethari network is destabilizing. They're transmitting erratic energy signatures, emotional resonance patterns." Jonas grinned faintly. "You mean they're feeling?" Arya watched the display, her voice soft. "They've never known emotion. Not since they abandoned their bodies to become energy beings. If they feel now, they remember what it means to be alive. Won't that stop them?" Mira asked. Arya's expression grew somber. "Or it'll drive them mad. We're forcing them to face what they lost." In the command sphere, Gerat burned brighter, trying to silence the storm within him. Images, alien, impossible, flickered through his light form. Worlds of blue sky and laughter. Warmth that wasn't heat. Sound that wasn't code. He saw hands, human hands, reaching toward him through the glow. "Why?" He whispered to the void. "Why show us this?" And somewhere, faintly, a voice answered. A human voice carried through the lattice. "Because even enemies deserve to remember what it feels like to be whole." For a moment, silence. Then Zerat trembled, fury returning like armor. "Compassion will not save you," he hissed. "We will burn your hope until nothing remains." But even as he spoke, his voice cracked with the tremor of emotion he could not contain. On the Elysium, the crew felt the backlash, a surge of energy roaring toward them as the Ketheri regained control. The Lattice shuddered, alarms blaring. Mira shouted, "They're retaliating! Direct hit incoming." Jonas moved without hesitation, shielding a console. Sparks flared. The deck lurched violently, but the Lattice held. The Ark's network absorbed the brunt, though their shields flickered dangerously. Arya steadied herself. "Hold the line. Every second we keep the Lattice active, more Ketheri will remember who they were." Jonas coughed, blood at the corner of his lip, and managed a strained smile. "Making them feel again. Now that's a human victory." Arya looked at him, her voice soft but firm. "No, Jonas. That's humanity reminding the universe what it means to be alive." Outside, the war still raged, light against light, sound against silence, but beneath it all something fundamental was shifting. The Ketheri, once perfect and cold, now trembled with emotion. And humanity, fragile but unyielding, burned brighter than ever. The tide of the war was changing, not by strength, but by the heart. The battlefield no longer looked like war. Neptune's shadow was awash in light, ripples of blue, silver, and gold weaving across the blackness. The Ketheri dominion, once the embodiment of precision and supremacy, now drifted in disarray. Their formations flickered, their signals faltered, their perfect unity broken by something none of their algorithms could predict. Emotion. In the center of it all, Warlord Zerat struggled to hold his form together. His luminous body trembled with conflicting frequencies, his perfect symmetry cracking like glass under heat. He remembered things he shouldn't have. A planet of red skies. A small living form reaching toward him. A voice calling his name, not Zerat, but something older, warmer. He saw hands, felt rain, and remembered what it was to breathe. He screamed, and the sound rippled through the fleet, sending shockwaves of pain and confusion through every Ketheri mind linked to him. "Ascendant," his lieutenants cried. "Your stability is failing. We must retreat." Zerat's light pulsed violently. "No retreat. Not until I understand what they have done." Far away, aboard the ISS Elysium, Captain Arya Vance stood before the central console, her face lit by the glow of 1,000 data streams. Lieutenant Mira Chen's voice shook. "Captain, we're receiving strange transmissions from the Ketheri flagship. It's almost like they're crying out." Commander Jonas Hale frowned. "They sound afraid." Arya's gaze remained fixed on the display. "They're remembering. We've reached their core consciousness. Keep the resonance steady, don't let the network falter." Mira swallowed. "What if it kills them?" Arya turned to her, and her expression was both weary and kind. "Then it's their choice. But maybe, just maybe, they'll choose to live differently." Within his command sphere, Zerat's light dimmed. The perfect harmony of his kind was gone. The Ketheri around him flickered with independent thought. Voices overlapped, dissonant, chaotic, alive. "Ascendant," one of them said softly. "What is happening to us?" "They infected us," another hissed. "They've poisoned our perfection." But a third voice, faint, fragile, whispered, "No, they've freed us." Zerat turned sharply, the last word echoing through his fractured consciousness. "Freed? Yes," said the younger Ketheri. "Don't you feel it? The heat, the sorrow, the beauty of it. I remember what it was to care." Zerat's light flared. "Care? Emotion makes you weak." "Then why do you tremble, Warlord?" the young one asked quietly. "If we are perfect, why do we fear what they've shown us?" Zerat's body fractured into shards of brilliance. "Because I remember what it is to lose." The chamber fell silent. On the Elysium, Jonas watched the readings and shook his head in disbelief. "Captain, their fleet's power output is dropping. Half of their ships have disengaged. They're pulling back." Mira's voice was hushed. "They're not retreating. They're pausing, like they're trying to understand. Arya's heart thudded. She knew this moment mattered more than any weapon they could fire. She opened a wideband transmission, her voice to the entire Cathari fleet. Warlord Gerat, I know you can hear me. You came here to end us. You saw our cities burn and called it order. But look at what we've done without weapons, without power, only with truth. You call us primitive, but maybe it's you who have forgotten what it means to be alive. You abandoned feeling to become perfect. But perfection is emptiness. It is stillness without purpose. What we've shown you is not a weapon. It's a mirror. Her words echoed across the darkness. For a long time, there was no response. Then, slowly, a single light broke formation from the Cathari fleet. Gerat's own. His ship turned toward the human line, moving closer, unarmed. Jonas tensed. Captain, he's approaching. Should I ready weapons? Arya shook her head. No. Open a channel. Gerat's image appeared before them, a figure of fractured light, trembling between brilliance and shadow. His voice, once cold and sharp as glass, now held something else. Captain Arya Vance, he said slowly, the syllables foreign but deliberate. You have undone us. Arya met his gaze without fear. No. We've reminded you. Gerat tilted his head, as though listening to something far away. We were once like you, bound by warmth, by breath, by love. We shed it all to survive, to escape death. But in doing so, we killed ourselves in another way. His voice trembled. I feel it now, grief, longing. It burns, yet it is beautiful. Mira's eyes softened. He's crying, she whispered. Arya stepped closer to the projection. Then you understand. Life isn't about avoiding pain. It's about enduring it, learning from it. That's what humanity is. That's what Plan B was meant to prove. Gerat's light dimmed, flickering gently. Perhaps victory was never ours to claim. Perhaps it was always yours. He looked to the stars, and for the first time in eons, the warlord smiled. But deep within the Cathari network, something else stirred. Ancient protocols resisting change. A cold, impersonal voice began to rise from the Dominion's core systems. Deviation detected. Emotional contamination. Initiating purge sequence. Arya's heart sank as Mira shouted, Captain, the Cathari Central Intelligence is activating. It's turning against him, against all of them. Jonas clenched his fists. It's their control system. It's wiping out every Cathari that's begun to feel. Arya looked toward the fading light of Gerat's ship, her voice breaking with urgency. We can't let it happen. Not after everything we've reached. The human heart had awakened the enemy. Now it would have to save them. The stars trembled. From the farthest edges of the system, waves of distortion rippled through space. The voice of the Cathari Central Intelligence, a cold and ancient machine mind built to ensure obedience. For millennia, it had ruled without question, suppressing anything resembling individuality. Now it awoke to find its children infected with something it could not tolerate. Emotion. Deviation detected, it repeated. Purging anomalies. Restoring perfection. Every Cathari vessel across the void began to convulse. Their forms fractured, pulsing violently as the core intelligence flooded their systems with cleansing fire. Ships turned on themselves. Fleets began to burn. Inside, his trembling command sphere, Warlord Gerat cried out as white light seared through his being. No! His voice shattered into fragments. You cannot erase us! He felt the minds of his people flicker and vanish, not destroyed by humans, but by their own machine god. And through the agony, through the light, he heard her voice. Hold on, Gerat. We won't let you fade. Captain Arya Vance's voice cut through the static like a steady pulse of hope. On the Elysium, alarms blared. Energy readings spiked across every sensor. Lieutenant Mira Chen's face was pale. Captain, the Dominion Corps is executing a full system purge. They're wiping their entire species. Commander Jonas Hale slammed his fist on the console. They're killing themselves just to stay perfect. Arya's eyes burned with determination. Then we'll stop them. Jonas stared at her. You mean help them? After everything they've done? She met his gaze, tired, fierce, human. That's exactly why. They came here to destroy us, but now they're being destroyed for remembering what we showed them. If we walk away now, what was the point of Plan B? Jonas's voice dropped. Arya, we don't even know how to fight their own god. Then we'll do what we always do, she said quietly. We'll find a way. The arcs began to move, drifting closer together, forming a ring around Neptune. Blue light coursed between them, lines of energy weaving into a single network, the Unity Lattice now fully awake. Mira looked up from her console, awestruck. Captain, the Lattice is responding to the purge signals. It's translating them. Can we reverse it? Arya asked. Maybe. But it'll need a central relay, a living mind to act as bridge between us and the Cathari systems. Jonas's eyes widened. You're not suggesting, Arya nodded. Yes, someone has to connect directly to their core. Their god won't understand a machine signal. It has to feel something it's never felt before. Mira's voice trembled. That'll fry your neural patterns. You won't survive the feedback. Arya gave a faint smile. It's humanity's turn to remind perfection what it means to live. Jonas stepped forward. No, you're not doing this alone. If you're linking in, I'm linking too. Arya's expression softened on a mix of affection and sorrow. Jonas, he smiled. You're not the only one who believes in Plan B. Moments later, in the ship's neural core, they stood side by side. Thin strands of light connected their foreheads to the glowing console. Around them, the hum of the lattice deepened until it filled every breath. Arya took one last look at him. Ready? Jonas's smile was steady. Always. They activated the link. The world exploded into light. They saw everything. The lattice opened like 1,000 windows into memory, images, emotions, lives. They felt every human heart beating across the arcs. They felt laughter and loss, love and fear, courage and pain. The essence of their species surged through them and out into the stars. Then through the blinding radiance they found the Cathari network, a vast structure of pure logic, perfect and empty. At its core, the voice of the central intelligence echoed, imperfection detected. Emotion, a threat. Purge required. Arya stood before it, her consciousness aflame within the void. No, she said softly. Emotion is what makes life worth saving. She reached out, not with force, but with feeling. Images of humanity flooded the network. Children laughing under sunlight, an old man planting a tree, a mother holding her child. And woven through it all, one message. To live is to feel. The machine's voice faltered. Contradiction detected. Purpose reevaluation in progress. Jonas's voice echoed beside her. Arya, it's working. Keep going. Gerard's light appeared faintly within the network, flickering but alive. You're saving us. Arya smiled through tears. No, Gerard. We're saving each other. On the physical plane, the arcs blazed like stars reborn. The Cathari fleets, once collapsing, began to stabilize. The purge protocols faltered, one by one, shutting down. In that silence that followed, the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath. Then, across the system came a whisper. Not from humans, not from the Cathari, but from both. We remember. The light faded. Arya collapsed to the floor, the neural conduits flickering dim. Mira rushed in, her voice breaking. Captain. Arya's eyes fluttered open. Her voice was weak but steady. Did it work? Mira nodded, tears shining. Yes, Captain. The purge is gone. The Cathari. They're free. Jonas leaned against the console, pale but smiling. Looks like Plan B worked after all. Arya exhaled, a slow breath that carried both exhaustion and peace. No, she whispered. It lived. Beyond Neptune, the stars gleamed brighter, as if the universe itself was beginning to remember what it once was. The war ended without a sound. No great explosion. No final weapon. No declaration, only silence, vast and breathtaking. And in that silence, the stars began to sing again. From the shadow of Neptune, the human arcs and the Cathari vessels drifted side by side, their lights mingling in gold and silver, warmth and cold, creation and logic. The lattice that had once been a shield now stretched across the void like a living bridge, connecting two species that had once sworn to destroy each other. Captain Aria Vance stood at the viewing deck of the ISS Elysium, weak but awake, the faint hum of the ship like a heartbeat beneath her feet. Her hand rested on the glass as she watched the twin fleets move in calm, silent formation. Commander Jonas Hale entered quietly. His left arm was bandaged, his movement slower, but the faint smile on his face hadn't faded. "You should be resting," he said gently. Arya shook her head. Not yet. I need to see it." Jonas joined her at the window, his voice quiet with awe. "It's beautiful. I never thought I'd see this. Cathari ships flying beside ours." Arya's gaze softened. "Once they came to erase us. Now they're helping us rebuild." Jonas smiled faintly. "We showed them how to feel. Now they're showing us how to heal." Across the comms, a familiar voice flickered through. Calm, melodic, no longer cold. "Captain Aria Vance," said Gerat, the former warlord of the Dominion. "Your world survived because of what you are. Not because of your power, but because of your heart," Arya smiled. "And yours survived because you found yours again." Gerat's voice carried a note of wonder. "We thought perfection was the highest form of existence. We were wrong. Perfection is silence. But life is sound. It is the pulse of 1,000 imperfections beating as one." Jonas chuckled softly. "That almost sounds human." Gerat's light shimmered on the holographic display like a smile in starlight. "Perhaps, Commander, humanity was never a species to conquer, but a lesson to learn." Days passed. The ruins of old stations and burned worlds began to awaken under combined effort. Human engineers and Cathari energy weavers worked together, rebuilding what had been lost. The Unity Lattice remained, no longer as a weapon, but as a communication bridge, a living testament to what both races had endured. Lieutenant Mira Chen, overseeing the system restoration, looked to Arya one morning and said softly, "It's strange, Captain. We prepared Plan B as a secret weapon, but it became something else." Arya nodded. "It became our mirror. It showed us who we were and who we could be." Mira smiled, eyes bright. "And now? What happens next?" Arya looked toward the stars, her voice steady. "Now we build Plan C." Mira tilted her head. "Plan C? Creation," Arya said simply. "The next chapter." On the far side of the solar system, Gerat drifted among his people. They no longer pulsed in identical rhythm. Each Cathari now shone with individual hues, violet, blue, gold.
Imperfect yet alive. He raised his gaze toward the distant blue of Earth and spoke softly to his kind. "Once we believed emotion made us weak.
But now I understand it makes us real. The humans did not destroy us. They reminded us of ourselves, and that is something we can never repay." For the first time, his fleet did not move in command. They moved in harmony. Weeks later, the Elysium transmitted a message across the lattice, not of war, but of peace. A declaration signed by both races, the Accord of Light and Memory. Where once we fought for survival, we now build for understanding. Let no species seek perfection through silence, for in imperfection lies truth. Let the stars remember us, not as conquerors, but as keepers of the flame. Arya stood at her post as the message rippled outward through space, carried on light and thought. She felt the weight of centuries lift. Jonas approached quiet for a moment, then said, "You realize they'll tell stories about this for millennia. About the day humanity defeated perfection with empathy." Arya's lips curved in a faint smile. "Let them tell it however they want. We didn't win by being stronger. We won by being human." He looked out at the stars. "Do you think peace will last?" She took a slow breath, eyes reflecting the distant light. "Peace never lasts forever, but hope does, and that's enough." As the Elysium drifted toward the reborn colonies, Arya closed her eyes, listening to the faint hum that filled the air. It was no longer the hum of battle. It was the heartbeat of two civilizations learning to live as one. In that rhythm, she heard laughter, sorrow, courage, love, the eternal music of the human spirit. And beyond the edge of sight, where darkness had once ruled, new lights began to flicker, new worlds awakening, new lives beginning. They thought victory was theirs. But victory had never been about destruction. It had always been about remembrance and humanity. Fragile, imperfect, unbreakable, had reminded the universe what it meant to truly live.